There are actors in the global economy who don't play by the international rules of the World Trade Organization or other international economic agreements. So we must keep our enforcement tools up to date and modern. We must be able to respond to unfair trade practices, but we also need an affirmative economic agenda. We can't just sit back in our borders and sharpen our spears. And to me, speaking to you in early December, this is an area where the present administration still needs to do more work. Many of our allies have characterized the Biden administration trade policy as similar to the Trump administration trade policy, just without the snarl. And so, for example, during the Trump administration, national security tariffs were illegitimately imposed on steel and aluminum exports from Europe, Japan, and other allied nations who are military allies who present no security risk. There had been the expectation that with the advent of the Biden administration, these tariffs would have been removed. Regrettably, to date, that has not occurred, with the exception of a negotiation with Europe that has replaced the system of tariffs, which most recognize as illegitimate, with a system of tariff rate quotas that continue to restrain trade. Similarly, and I have to say, the report reflects the consensus of the authors, but foreign policy for the middle class was supposed to be a rhetorical prism for looking holistically at foreign policy, domestic policy, and international economic policy. Regrettably, it's become somewhat of a rhetorical prison. And Singapore Prime Minister Lee pointed this out recently at the Bloomberg New Economy conference hosted in Singapore, when he said that he thinks the administration errs where it insists on tying every single strand of international economic policy to some particularized benefit to the middle class, and that the United States is thereby missing out on the bigger picture of measures, agreements, initiatives that would certainly strengthen the middle class as well as the US economy, but not in a one-for-one linear form. So too, as I've indicated, thus far, the present administration's trade policy seems very close to Trump's policy. And you don't change wrong-headed trade policy simply by relabeling it worker-centric trade policy. For example, we have as yet no affirmative economic agenda in the Asia Pacific. By the time this program airs, we may see a little meat on the bones of the new Indo-Pacific Asian Economic Framework, but as yet, all we're hearing about is subjects and principles as our allies, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, are clamoring for intensified US engagement in the region. China is moving ahead. China wishes to join the successor to the Trans-Pacific Partnership that the US negotiated and that President Trump pulled the US out of. That successor is called CPTPP. China has indicated it wants to join. The UK has indicated it wants to join. Thus far, the United States is on the sideline, fearful of the domestic politics of trade and not leading in this area. Our allies very much want us back at the table not just talking about principles, not just having fine sounding leader statements, but actually negotiating rules and standards.